Hi guys, and welcome to this other video. So in this video we are going to show how to get started with a FortiGate appliance or a FortiGate device in the real world. So we are talking here about default IP and IP addressing, the management protocol, default credential, the differences between a real world device, a real world for FortiGate firewall, and the virtual appliance such as the one that we have in GNS3. So we also talk about DHCP server in the real device and DHCP client on the virtual appliance. And we'll see all of this in a lab environment. So by default, when you get your FortiGate appliance, usually if it's a real world, a real device, so like the one you buy on the Amazon website or you purchase from a store. So usually port one on this firewall are usually configured with DHCP server. So you have a DHCP server on port one for the network or subnet 192.168.1.0/24 with the default IP, default gateway of 1.99, which is the IP address of port one. So usually on that device, if you connect it directly on your workstation through a network cable, you can browse. You can go on the web browser and then enter 192.168.1.99 and hit enter. Then you will see you will display the login page for your firewall. So that is it for real world devices. But for devices or appliances that we uploaded in GNS3, usually on port one of the DAC of the firewall, on port one of the firewall, usually you instead have DHCP client enabled. It means that on this device, when you have DHCP client enabled, it means if you connect another device that has DHCP server already enabled on it, then the firewall will get a new IP address. But the firewall that you put on GNS3 don't have DHCP server as the firewall in the real world. This is the main difference between the firewall in the real world and the firewall in GNS appliance. In the real world, the firewall has a DHCP server configured on port 1. So port 1 can already start assigning IP addresses to devices that are connected on it. While on GNS appliance, the FortiGate appliance that you upload on GNS3, it instead has DHCP client enabled on port 1. It means if you want your FortiGate in GNS3 to obtain an IP address from another DHCP server, you need to connect this FortiGate on port 1. If you connect it on another port, not the port 1, you will not have you will not receive the firewall will not receive an IP address. So this is the main difference. We are going to see this in the next minute in the GNS3 lab. So when you have access to your firewall, for the credential part, by default, the username is admin and the password is blank. So this is same for a real world device and the one you have in your GNS3. So you enter your admin, then you hit enter with no password. Though you'll be prompted to enter or to create a new password. So from there you create a new password, and there you are in your firewall to start doing your stuff. You can also decide to connect to your firewall instead through command line. So you can connect to your firewall devices through a command line interface or use a third-party software such as Putty or Teratem. So you'll be connected on CLI, then you can type command lines directly on your firewall. So also on your firewall by default, management protocols that are enabled, for example, ping. So you can already, when you buy your when you have your first firewall, your one firewall, you can already launch ping requests, HTTPS and SSH requests on your firewall. So let's jump into our GNS3 lab and do some practicals. So here in our GNS3 lab, I'm going to use this FortiGate 7010. So considering that this is the new firewall that you have, if you want to connect it in real world, what you need to do, if you have a workstation, let's say this is your workstation. I'm using here a webcam. So if you're using a webcam like your workstation here, normally you should connect your workstation directly to port 1 on your firewall. In real world, the port 1 on your firewall have DHCP server. So normally when you are connecting your workstation on the port 1, your device will receive an IP address from the DHCP server that is here. But as we are here in a virtual environment, this firewall does not have this information. It does not have a DHCP server. So from here, if I do edit and on command this auto eth0, then I will hit start. Then here also I will start the firewall. So normally in real world, doing this, you will have here IP address you have here is 192.168.1.99. This is going to be the IP address here in real world. So your device here will probably be taking some IP like 192.168.1. Maybe 100. This is what your device will be taking here. So in real world, this is what's supposed to happen. So in real world, if I'm connecting to my workstation and typing 192.168.1.99, I will normally see the IP address or the interface of my firewall device. So here, what we are going to do, we are going to bring our own network. So the network on which my workstation is actually running, I'm going to bring it here and we'll do another test. So I'm running this on my GNS3 virtual machine. And here I'll also bring a switch. Okay, bring a switch. So what I want us to notice here is that I'll be connecting my own local network to port 2 instead of port 1. So you remember in the previous slide, I explained that in the real world, you have port 1 that has DHCP server for real devices, but on FortiGate appliances, port 1 instead has DHCP client. So it is enabled, DHCP client is enabled on port 1 so that this firewall can collect IP address. But the other interfaces from port 2 going up, these other ports are not configured as DHCP client. So normally they don't get IP addresses if they are connected to a DHCP server. So I will just connect it to port 2, then we'll try a test to see that it is not going through. So I'm connecting this to port 2. So this is my own subnet. So this subnet has an IP of 192.168.2.0 /24. So here normally this device is going to have one IP address from this interface. As it is connected to port 2, normally it will not work. So let's connect to the firewall. So I'm just double clicking to the firewall. Okay, so this is our first connection to the firewall. So I will connect with local or our default credentials. This admin. Hit enter. There is no password, so I hit enter. I'll be asked to create a new password. I create a new password. I confirm the new password. So from here, I'm in the firewall actually. So now let me see if I've received an IP address. So I'll type get system interfaces physical. Okay, so I hit enter. So you can see here that actually from our diagram, port 1 on which DHCP is enabled. You see, DHCP is enabled here on port 1, while on port 2, it is in static mode, port 3 static mode, all the other interfaces are in static mode. But here we don't have an IP address because the DHCP is enabled on port 1, but we have connected port 1 directly on this workstation. So if we want this firewall to obtain an IP address, we need to invest and connect port 1 directly to this subnet and port 2 to this other one. So from here, what we are going to do now is we're just going to delete these connections from here. Delete this one, delete the one. Then from here, I'll connect. Let me take this. I'll connect our network directly now to port 1. Then I can also connect this one to port 2. Okay, so now I'll go back again on my firewall. Then I will call back the previous command, hit enter. So now from here, you see that on my port 1 with DHCP, I'm now receiving an IP address of 2.74. So now our firewall device has received an IP address on port 1 because, as I said, port 1 is the only interface that is configured as a DHCP client for virtual appliances. While in real world, this port 1 is configured as DHCP server. Appliance, virtual appliance, DHCP client, real appliance, DHCP server. Okay, so means that from here we can also go directly on our workstation here, or our web browser, sorry, type 192.168.2.74. So here you got access to our firewall. So I can type default credential admin and the password that I created earlier. Hit enter. So now I'm in. So from here I have access to my firewall. So from here, in the next videos, guys, I will show how to configure DHCP server on the other interfaces. So apart of port 1, we'll see how to configure DHCP server on other interfaces, so that, for example, if you want this other subnet, this other part to have another subnet with a different IP address, we can see how to configure this interface to be a DHCP server. So guys, stay tuned. Let's meet in the next video.